It's like she has extra bones or something. I'm not a big fan of her wings just clipping through her bodysuit like that. Listen, I'm not a furry, but welcome back to How Many Tries, a content free time show where we look at 3D models in video games. Today we're taking a look at almost every single Rouge the Bat model, starting with her model from Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, which, from my understanding, is basically the same as the one from Sonic Adventure 2 on the Dreamcast. Rouge's first model is very curvy. Also a ton of polygons for what was originally a Dreamcast game. 3,034 triangles. Jeez, it's almost more lewd as a wireframe. Let's move on, shall we? Sonic Heroes released 2 years after Sonic Adventure 2 Battle in 2003, so they made her a little less wide. Her ears are more narrow, her limbs are thinner and narrower. This is a pretty major design change compared to what we've seen in the other 3D Sonic models. Her skin, or the tan parts of her fur, whatever you want to call that, is a lot lighter, a lot less orange. This is the only game where she has pink eyeshadow instead of blue eyeshadow. They gave her a whole, Power Rangers style combat suit for some reason. They moved her iconic heart shape down to her belt. They gave her some, robot boots. Her wings are much more pink than they were in Sonic Adventure 2. They gave the outside of her wings the Jinx treatment, where they went from black to purple. Out of these two, I personally prefer the Sonic Adventure 2 design, but not for the reasons you're thinking. This Sonic Heroes model is just under 2,700 tries, about 300 less than the Sonic Adventure 2 model, likely for performance reasons since you're playing as 3 separate characters at a time in that game. 2 years later, in 2005, we got Shadow the Hedgehog. She's not playable in that game, but still a pretty solid model, though this one's 1,000 tries less, only about 1,600 tries. And again, they switched from black to purple, this time with the pants. I guess they were trying to incorporate elements from both of these first two designs, because they went back to the style of the original outfit, but seem to have kept more of the coloring from the Sonic Heroes outfit. They also added little hearts to her shoes, which is a nice touch. In 2006, we got Sonic Riders. I think as far as the Sonic Riders design changes go, Rouge's new outfit is one of my favorites. I think the black looks pretty good on her. She's got these cool flowers on the bottom of her pants. The giant hands and feet still look kind of dumb to me, but for a Sonic Riders model, I think it looks pretty good. A little over 2,400 tries. They also brought back the slightly darker tan fur from Sonic Adventure 2, which I think I prefer, and the dark purple wings, though they are noticeably much less detailed than all of the other wings from the earlier games. Next we have Sonic 06. I gotta say, for as much flack as this game gets, this is probably my favorite Rouge model yet. They mostly went back to our original Sonic Adventure 2 design, though they kept the hearts on the shoes from Shadow the Hedgehog. And it even looks better in-game. It's really washed out here due to the lighting in Blender, but you can see those colors really pop in-game. Though still surprisingly lacking in detail on the wings there. Just over 6,800 tries. Next we have a couple of mobile games to look at. This is Sonic Rivals 2, released a year after Sonic 06 in 2007. This was a PSP game, so much lower polygon count, only about 1,000 tries. For a PSP game, this looks pretty good. I've definitely seen better models on the system. She's pretty lanky. I don't like how long her arms and legs are. Her ears are super long. This might be just the Sonic Rivals thing in general, but she just looks really elongated, especially that arm. It's like she has extra bones or something. Also, her eyeshadow doesn't seem to cover her entire eyelid for some reason. They did go back to the purple and black wings, which I think is a nice touch, but maybe just because of the hardware, I'm gonna say this is one of the weaker Rouge models. Notice I didn't say weakest. That title goes to, of course, Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood, released for the Nintendo DS a year after Sonic Rivals 2. Of course, like all the Sonic Chronicles models, this is easily the worst Rouge model. All of the Sonic Chronicles models have this thing where they have giant protruding chests for some reason. I guess that makes a little bit more sense for Rouge, but it still looks really weird. I guess they got most of her costume right at least, but they messed up the shoes. The hearts are supposed to be on the tips, not halfway up them. Given that this is a Nintendo DS game, this model's only 365 tries, which isn't bad, but I just think they could have arranged those polygons a bit better. Same thing with the textures, they definitely need some work. Next up is Sonic Generations, released in 2011. Easily the best Rouge model since Sonic 06. Almost 16,500 tries. Look at the detail on this thing. The shapes are so rounded. Really well sculpted model. As far as the textures go, they look great. Decidedly brighter pink this time around. It's got a bit more of a reddish hue to it. I'd say this is probably the best Rouge model so far. Next up we have Mario and Sonic at the London 2012 Olympic Games, released just a couple weeks after Sonic Generations. We have both the low poly model from that game on the right and the higher poly model on the left here. The low poly model is just under 1,300 tries, while the high poly model is just under 5,300. We want to start by comparing the high poly model to the Sonic Generations model. The model itself doesn't have a ton of huge differences other than it just being a much lower polygon count than the Sonic Generations model, but the coloring of the hearts and the sleeves and stuff is much more purple. The eyeshadow is a bit darker, and she's got a center mouth in this game instead of the side mouth. Also, the tan is a bit paler. As far as this low poly version goes, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is just the low poly swap out they would do for when they need to save memory in the Wii version of the game. I wish I had the 3DS version to show you guys, but unfortunately I do not. Next up we have Sonic Dash, released in 2013 for mobile devices, about 4,900 tries, which is actually just a few hundred less than the Mario and Sonic at the 2012 Olympic Games model, at least the high poly version. And despite being thousands of tries more than the low poly version, it doesn't look that much better. It almost looks kind of worse. All of the Sonic Dash models seem to have this kind of blocky look to them. I'm not sure if that's a stylistic thing or what, but I'm not a huge fan of it. I do kind of like the side mouth though. I kind of miss that in these models. Sonic Runners also released for mobile phones a couple years later in 2015. I like this model quite a bit better than the Sonic Dash one. I like this redder version of pink they have on her clothes and the darker black. They also made her wings a little bit darker. They also dropped her eyelids a bit for her default expression. Definitely not quite as blocky as the Sonic Dash model. Despite being less polygons, this one's only about 3,500 tries. We got one more set of Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games models to look at from the Rio 2016 games. These are some great looking models, even the low poly version. We got, wow, 11,658 tries on the left here, just under 5,500 tries on the right. You can kind of see she's got like muscle definition now. You can see the shoulder muscles, you can see the definition in her legs and some other places. Interesting how the pink from her gloves kind of radiates onto her skin a bit here. Sonic Forces Speed Battle, released a year later in 2017, back down to about 4,200 tries. Looks fine for a mobile game. Nothing too impressive, but definitely not bad either. Her model from the real version of Sonic Forces, the home console version, also released in 2017, looks much better, clocking in at a whopping 25,000 tries. Look at how much detail is in her gloves, her wings, her face here. A really good, highly detailed model. Even her eyelashes look slightly more realistic. I'd say the only thing this model is missing is maybe some of the muscle definition from the Olympic Games model. And lastly, we have her Sonic X Shadow Generations model. Couple interesting choices here. I'm not a big fan of her wings just clipping through her bodysuit like that. You can see it wasn't like that in the original Sonic Generations. They also made another change I'm not a huge fan of. Listen, I'm not a furry, but just slightly fewer polygons than the original Sonic Generations model, which is funny since this is supposed to be a remaster. 16,366 as opposed to the original version's 16,478. So out of all of these are definitely my top three. Sonic Generations, Mario and Sonic 2016, and Sonic Forces. But now seeing the three of them side by side, I think my favorite's probably the original Sonic Generations model. I feel like it has the perfect balance of bright and colorfulness and realism. Looking back at it, I think this Olympic Games model is just a bit too realistic, seeing all the wrinkles in the clothes and everything. And the Sonic Forces model is just a little bit dull compared to the bright and colorful Sonic Generations one, despite it having a much higher polygon count. But what do you think? What's your favorite Rouge model? We've definitely come a long way since that original Sonic Adventure 2 model, and I do kind of miss these outfit changes they used to give her in the beginning. Let me know which of these is your favorite in the comments, and also feel free to tell me who you'd like to see one of these videos on next. I also have videos on Sonic, Supersonic, Tails, Knuckles, Shadow, and even Silver here on the channel, which I'll leave a link to in the video description. Thanks for watching.